Working on a '03 Santa Fe here. This is a 3.5 liter. And what I wanted to talk about here was putting this timing belt on because these things are kind of a pain in the ass. The rear two cams are at a point where they're critical either way, and if your belt's stretched and you let the tensioner go, the cam's going to slam forward. It happens almost every time. So that's not really what we're here to talk about. What I want to talk about is how to get the damn thing back on. So what I do is I will put my new belt on and I jam. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, there's not a specific tool to this. Find something that fits in between here to hold the belt, and then I usually use a wire brush and a screwdriver. Tap it in there to where it holds the belt tight against this pulley so that this thing's not going to move when you start messing around with it. Because this is kind of a, as far as timing belts go, this is going to be one of the more difficult ones to do. So start by putting all your pulleys in, put the tensioner pulley and everything in there. It doesn't matter if you put the actual tensioner on there yet. That's the last thing, because this thing is under enough tension to where it won't go on with the hydraulic part on. So what I do here is come up to the first cam, and let's see if I can find my mirror that I literally just had a second ago. My wrench. So what I do is come in here, drop the wrench, and you can see, I don't know if you can see, turn the screen on, see if you can see. Timing marks. Those pink little dots. Actually, I don't know if you can see it at all because I can barely see my tiny little screen. So there's two paint marks on the cams, and there's two little wings on the timing cover that aligns where this goes. So what I do is I put the belt on, put a clamp on it, use a 17, come in here, put this on, and I put tension on it until it starts wanting to turn the engine over, but not quite. Then I put a wood clamp on it and then mark it, because if this thing magically decides to pop loose, which I almost guarantee you at one point it will, you're going to want to just be able to line these back up without screwing with it. So proceed with the second one, do the same thing, put the belt on, put tension on it, see where it's at, get it to where it's, where these marks are, it's either going to be here or here or here. If it's a little bit off to one side, it's okay, but if it's way up here, that's obviously a huge difference. So put the clamp on here, mark it again so you know where it goes. Come around the pump. Now this one right here is the most of the painest of the assest of them all, because this one is right on the cusp of springing forward. So same process, come through. You're gonna probably have to use a mirror. Actually, as a matter of fact, you're going to have to use a mirror to get these marks lined up. See, same thing, pink marks, yellow marks. Sometimes if somebody's done a belt before, they'll paint them a different color, but there's only one mark, it only goes one way. So I take my long 17 and a bungee cord, hook it to the hood to keep tension on that sucker, because you got slack here, all this slack that needs to be taken up. So each one of these, you go in progression, you have to take all of the slack out. Now the rear one is not as springy as the front one, but same type of deal. Come in here and mark it, because I almost guarantee you this one's going to pop on you and send your wrench flying into your finger, into your glove, and make you have a nice little numb spot for a while. So once you get that marked, go around the back. That one's not as springy. Put your clamp on it and make sure your belt goes through. It's hard to see here, but there's a lip back here on the back of this thing, and it has to be in its groove, otherwise it's going to throw you off. So pull your belt around the pulley, and then what you do is I get a small screwdriver and I stick it in between here and here, pry this pulley up, put some tension on it, and then you can zip this down in there. The threads on that contact are only about that big, so there's not a lot holding that sucker in there. And then kind of go through with your wrench like you did before, put some tension on it, make sure all the slack's out of it, and then you pull your pin. Boom! Right? So there's the old tensioner. This one I was able to push in with my finger earlier, but it's since retracted, so So that's it. Also, these little dots here, when you go and put the new pulley on, there's no mark or indicator or anything on the back of that. So you want those dots to be basically parallel with the, you know, between this bolt and this bolt. Imagine there's a line there. You want those dots to be basically straight. So the old pulley is these fun? Yeah, see, there's no marks on it. So the marks, they're supposed to be a tool that you use to set this, but nobody does that. And then you know, just make sure you replace. This one came as a kit, which I don't know what I did with. Been kind of cleaning up in here, but that's about it. Also, the motor mount bracket, this is stupid. There's a mystery bolt here that runs, you kind of see it down there, runs straight through that, but it's blocked by the alternator. So you have to pull the alternator. We don't have to pull it. Pull the bolts out, which have these little feeties on them, so you can kind of tap them out. And then what I do is take a piece of cardboard, shove that in there to kind of put in between the radiator and the alternator, because once you poked a hole in one of these things and you have to do it for free, you'll never do it again. See what else. The bracket goes on after the belt. It goes on top of here. Also, make sure that the crank sensor wire comes out the middle, and you have another the AC compressor that goes here, and then that's it. It's all that goes through. There's one here, but that runs along the outside. After that, after this, you put this bracket back in. A lot of the times this mystery bolt here, the one in the front that goes this way, somehow magically never ends up back in there. Another thing, pro tip, is when you put the water pump on, man, I'm just not prepared for this. Put the water pump on, it comes as two pieces. There's a main body housing and then the actual pump housing. There's an O-ring in here. Put some Sil-Glide on the O-ring before you stick it in, and before you get too rambunctious, start putting all this stuff back together. Put coolant in it, fill it up, and see if there's any leaks before you get all this stuff put back together, because it's kind of a pain in the ass. I mean, it's not really that big of a pain in the ass, but it's a pretty big pain in the ass to get all of this this together. And then the idler, the bracket, there's the bolt that goes through here, and there's also 3 other bolts that have to line up with this all at the same time. Also, you have to put this bolt in before you put it in, otherwise there's no way to get it in, just like a PT Cruiser. So what I do is, before I tighten that bolt down, I'll take 2 of these bolts, these long ones, these ones here, and I'll stick them through this bracket, one here and one on the bottom, to make sure everything's lined up, because there's nothing worse than trying to get that son of a bitch back in there and the holes don't line up because the bracket's off, and then you have to mess with loosening that, and then it messes with your timing, because when you move that, it changes the tension on the belt. So that's dumb. Let's see, what else? Is there anything else dumb that we need to talk about? Motor mount's not that dumb. Putting the alternator back in is kind of dumb. You have to feed these bolts up, you know, up through that void through the bottom. There's no way to get it through the top. It's not possible, so don't even try. You have to feed in the top and then feed in the bottom. That's pretty much it. The intake, unrelated to the timing belt, but some of y'all probably want to know this anyway. Mystery bracket. There's 4 bolts on the brackets, and also the EGR tube plugs into the back of the intake, which you have to undo all of that to get it off. I usually just take the throttle body and huck it in there. And make sure you don't lose this stainless gasket. Well, it's actually aluminum, but either way, don't lose that. And then there's a couple other things. That's really all it is to this, as far as like the major shittiness to it. Make sure you're paying attention to this, because if you set your wrench like that and you turn and look away from it, that sucker comes loose and pulls that ratchet down at a ludicrous speed, and it hits you in the knuckle. It's gonna hurt. So make sure you pay attention to this, and also don't forget to put the bracket back for the water pump, because this whole area up here is just hung out in space. This is the reinforcement here for the water pump. Don't forget that, or else it'll vibrate and it'll cause that O-ring to leak. So let's see what else. There's one other thing I wanted to talk about. These things are famous, 100%, almost guaranteed. Every single one of these has a power steering pump that's either been replaced or leaks, or the line leaks at the fitting. What am I looking at here? Oh, it's underneath here. A lot of times they leak here or at the compression fitting here, like this one. And this is actually kind of stupid because it comes out of the pump, runs up and over the motor mount into this cooler, and then runs back down, and then there's a bulkhead that runs into the rack. These are a pain in the ass to get to and replace. So if you're going to do it, get the hose and the pump. Let's see, do I have, what do I got? The pump, I got that from O'Malley's. Master Pro brand 990-0646. Also, the hose looks like this. It's a little bit different than the one that came out of it. This is an import direct 134-02-342 power steering hose. Now this is for the 2003s-ish. I believe 2005 was when they changed all this to the newer style, which is different. So make sure you check before you start ordering stuff. But this is the timing belt kit. Comes with the water pump and everything. Import direct. Makes some really good stuff. Comes with mostly Gates products. Comes in a box. Everything's in there, instead of trying to piece everything together. And let's see, we got some intake throttle body gaskets there. So that's all we're doing on this. This is a learner car for a friend of mine who is learning how to drive, and we don't want to put a whole bunch of money into it for, reasons. So you know how that goes. So that is about it. We're also doing trans fluid and a couple other fluids. I drained 6.5 quarts out of this, which was overfilled by a substantial amount. I think these take usually about 4.5 to fill. There's a drain plug on the bottom. That is about it. Oh, also valve covers is what we did. And by we, I mean me. So those aren't too bad. You have to pull the intake off to get to them. If you're going to pull the intake, you might as well do valve covers. If you're going to do valve covers, you might as well throw spark bolts and wires into it. We didn't vote to do that on this because these ones aren't too old. They're a little bit saturated, but I don't know how long this car is going to last, so we don't want to throw a whole bunch of money into it. If it has a misfire, then we'll just pull the intake off and do it anyway. Also, another thing to mention is the back of this water pump. There's a pipe that runs all the way across the engine into the back of this thermostat housing, and there is a bolt that retains that, but it's not very secure, so don't be reefing on that pump when you go to take it off. You want to start, work it gently, massage it, and work it, and then you'll get it off. Be gentle. See, I think that's pretty much it for this one. Just that belt, man. Like I said, don't turn your back on this thing because it will screw up your day.